Jill and Stacy Show.
One item, and it fulfills a consultation requirement in SB1 related to the selection of curricula. And I am going to turn it over to Jim just for a quick update as required by law.
Thank you, Dr. Hauswald. Yes, so according to Senate Bill 1, the superintendent selects the curriculum for the school year. We've been doing this I think this is the third year we'll be doing that. This curriculum, as you see in front of you, you can find this on the website now. It is now public. This is a new format that we're using for elementary and secondary. Last year, secondary used this format, and we decided to really streamline it to be K-12. It is searchable. You can search by content area, by school, by grade level, whether it's a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, really technology. Kudos to technology for making this happen. Also, big thanks to Julie and to Tracy over the last 2 years, how they've developed this. We were required to consult with the site-based councils. We did that through our principals. It was open for public comment for 2 weeks in April. It's had some really good comments from the public and from parents regarding, actually pretty positive. There were some concerns about technology and how much we use technology, but that's understandable. And that's here. If you want to take a look at this over the next several weeks, if you have any questions, feel free to ask Dr. Hauswald or myself. We'd be able to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Dr. Detweiler. Again, as we have shared previously in terms of our leadership priorities and our strategic plan, we have tried to be more efficient and effective in centralizing at a district level our curricula. We have a timeline over the next 4 years to do that. We know that particularly helps our priority populations, our students of poverty who may move to multiple elementary schools in a year because of forced mobility. It also reduces the overall cost for purchasing. We don't have to have multiple resources for a student who attends multiple schools, and it really creates a school system instead of a system of schools, which is a charge the board has given us. So, and again, we are allowed to do that because of this law, but we are also required to get community input, and we're required to present publicly how we did that input. So thank you for that information. And with that, I conclude my comments.
We began the month of June with an adjusted cash balance of $68,381,425. We had total receipts of $7.5 million and total expenditures of $28.1 million. Our total net decrease in cash was $20,568,770. Our balance on hand at the end of the month was $47,812,656. Some outstanding items, or some notable items for the month, is that we had a carryover of $3.8 million in outstanding purchase orders. We also had $265,000 in layback funds that were used to reduce the cost of salaries for the general fund this year. Some notable items are that we had 5 summer payrolls that we completed on time for our school year staff. We received $3.4 million in occupational taxes. Overall, our operating expenditures are consistent with last year and according to our budgetary plan.
Yes, Board. I recommend that the Board approve recommended action new business item C, the District Code of Acceptable Behavior and Discipline, often called the Code of Conduct for the 25-26 school year. Special thanks to Jim and Kathy, and it's been a tremendous amount of work because of the delayed policies we received from KDE this year. Of course, incorporating those and updating the Code of Conduct. So again, I would recommend the Board approve the item as presented.
Move on to agenda item 8, recommended action, new business item D. Dr. Hauswald.
Thank you, Chairman Parks. I recommend the Board approve recommended action, new business item D, annual board policy updates. These are emergency readings, which also requires reading the numbers. That's 03.13216, 03.23216, 08.11311, 08.2323, and 08.2324. This comes under the advisement of KDE and our attorney, who has recommended, because of the delay in providing these and the required timeline by which they must be approved, that these qualify for emergency readings and thus cannot have 2 readings because of the required timelines. And if you have any questions about the legal requirement, I'll turn over to Olivia, but I would recommend the board approve these specific policy updates as emergency readings as presented.
For the record, these are 4 policies that deal with communication with students, which are largely in response to partially just some district initiatives as well as the requirements of Senate Bill 181 that we need to have in place before school starts, which the next board meeting is the first day of school, so it's after school starts.
I just have a question, just for some clarification. On 03.13216, at the very bottom, I'll read it, it says, "Staff shall protect student confidentiality and only share information with parents, guardians, as permitted by law." What would constitute, what kind of information would not be shared with parents?
It just means that you can only share information with parents,
Okay, that's-
except for there are certain occasions like the Cabinet for Health and Family Services and KDE are the exception to that. So I see how you're reading it,
Yes.
but it's the inverse of
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you very much.
I recommend the board approve new business item F, which is additional documentation related to the purchase and sale agreement of 8775 US Highway 42 in Union, the former Kroger building. Again, I recommend approving as presented. Kim is here. It's been a year. I do want to update on the background behind how it started at 300 and then ultimate.
Is that a limit?
No.
So the number 300 is a beginning number because that on the current district facilities plan, it was listed as 300 students. So think back to when we first started talking about this and it was only going to house a small number of schools, those Florence schools. So since it says that currently on the DFP, we have to do everything right now using 300. Once the next DFP, which is in process, is approved, then we'll go back and amend that and max it out to which is about 520 students. So it's temporary. So we'll have a revision.
So before, and as a reminder, this is the final agreement to purchase the building, but there is a 2-year construction timeline. I've been promised that it will be operational for the 2027-28 school year. But I think a lot of people think that we can just move some tables and chairs in there and that this will be operational in the fall. But nonetheless, this is a tremendous amount of work. It's been about a year. This process, it's taken 12 months and it should have taken 1. So we're really pleased to be at this point. But for the community to know, it creates that for 27-28. But there will be some opportunities to use parts of the facility prior to that. So. Yes, board. This is truly privilege of the board. Of course, I would recommend approval of new business item G. It's the July 25 to December 25, a revision of official board committees and chairpersons. This just makes a few modifications. Particularly, it articulates a co-chair so that a board member has a little more active involvement in the creation of the agendas. It also clarifies when there were 3 standing committees, the 5 standing committees meet. It also creates a student and staff experiences committee, which allows us to really dive deep. I know Mr. Ball will be involved in a lot of the staff. We did stay interviews this year of 400 approximately. How many stay interviews do we do? 259 stay interviews. Those are in-depth sit-down conversations. We have a lot of data and a lot of things this committee can do to understand employee satisfaction, employee dissatisfaction, and continue to work to improve retention. So there's some modifications to that, and I thank Mr. Parks, who really worked with me to clarify that, and I would, it's a privilege of the board, but would, of course, recommend approval.
My time as chair, one of the things that has come up with several members of this board have been wanting more involvement in committees. And it sometimes, because the business of, you don't realize this when you run for these positions, but the business of education is very regimented. It's on a time chart. You do this month, and you do this month, and you have to have all these state statutes met by a certain time frame. And so sometimes it can feel somewhat routine, and some new board member, including myself, would have liked more input on agenda creation or topics that might come up in various committee meetings. So this solves one of those things by making one of the 2 board members that we're only allowed 2 board members present at committee meetings. One of those board members will be a co-chair or vice chair, however you want to put it, and help create the mission or the vision for that particular committee. So this hopefully will help board members become more active, look forward to board committee meetings, because sometimes they can, be somewhat, a requirement, right? And we do, just so everyone in the public understands, almost everything that comes before this board starts in a committee. And they're very, very important. They're open to the public, and parents can participate. And a lot of input is probably better at that level because it helps shape concepts and things that might come before the board. So hopefully in this model, we'll continue what this district has done so well, which is produce a good solid vision and good solid recommendations for this board to consider.
I know this has been here, it's here this way this year. I know it was on there last year, but I don't really remember when some of these committees were relegated to this ad hoc committee section. Every year that I have been on the board, every year we put people on a legislative committee. It's always been treated like a standing committee of the board because there's always a legislative session every year, and we need to be actively engaged in it. We generally have negotiations every year. We may approve a 2-year calendar, but sometimes those still need to come up. Council of Councils, yes, I can see that. I mean, that was kind of an add-on a few years back. Not Facilities Committee. I mean, it's kind of always been a beginning of the year appointment of board members and the district staff person. And I guess me personally, I don't like the ad hoc only as needed or whenever we want to kind of designation for some of these things that are integral parts of the work of the district and the board. So that's just my only comment there.
Would you like to make an edit to any of those?
Well, I like the thought process of assigning a board member to be a co-chair with the district staff. I think that's good. Maybe it'll help take some pressure off of them or maybe add some pressure. Who knows? I think that I like the efficiency of combining some of these committees together to broaden the scope of the work, which should make them more vibrant and more valuable. And in that regard, I don't know why you couldn't have a negotiations/calendar standing committee.
And I will say that in my understanding of ad hoc based on board feedback is there's a question of will they meet, because I know, for example, we were not as involved in legislative as we should. So
No, we were not.
And so we want to have the clarification that ad hocs shall meet X number of days. The standing ones were the ones that we were trying to define as there's so much work that they will meet monthly or bi-monthly. And whereas legislative, we know there's a timeline where it's most operable between October and, there may be things throughout the year, but October to March, for example. For the calendar, it's when we need to do the calendar and negotiations. So the ad hoc shall meet. It's not meant to be, it's just, if we have it. And I'm happy to clarify on that through this, but the idea was trying to communicate to our staff members and our parents that these 5 meetings meet monthly or bi-monthly, and there's a cadence to them, if you will. They meet on this Tuesday or this Wednesday or this Thursday. The ad hoc was really just, I don't know why you put them there originally, but in my mind, it's not.
See, that's just it. I don't ever, until just recently, do I ever recall seeing that.
I understand that.
And like I say, I've still got to go back because I want to try to go back and look 10 years back.
Well, and so my point is those are, and if we wanted to redefine those, and again, this is for 6 months, so this is easy to consider for January of 26. I'm happy. It's really a privilege of the board, but those are more irregular schedules. In other words, we do the calendar when we need to create a new calendar. We do legislative during certain times of the year when we need to be more active. So those might meet more often. Negotiations, of course, you meet, there's a clear time by that. But they're not standing monthly, so I am fine to clarify
Sometimes
that.
it feels like they are, doesn't it, Kelly?
But I mean, I'm fine to clarify that, and if you want to give Mr. Parks some
I
feedback.
guess the only thing that I would disagree with you on, Dr. Hauswald, is that negotiations is basically October through December. If you wait till October, you're done for that upcoming legislative session. In my mind, a legislative committee should be a committee that's meeting, if not every month, every other month, beginning in January, because you already know from what didn't get through the prior legislative session what there's going to be coming down the pike. And as you can see, do you know how much the KSBA policy staff had to do to get through just what came out of this last general session? And now you've got a budget session coming up. We should have already been working on that. So I don't think that, and we had our local legislators come in and say, hey, we want to be more engaged with you. Well, I say, let's engage them. Let's tell them why universal preschool, which every one of them that was attended our last roundtable sat in this room and said, well, we don't think that's important. Well, we do. And we need to tell them and show them why we do. And you can't wait till October to do that. So that's just, I wholeheartedly disagree that should be an ad hoc committee, and it should not be a regular standing committee with more importance and more focus. And unfortunately for you, that really should be with you
Yeah, I have no
driving
problem.
that.
I have no problem
that's
sharing
just-
it.
I mean, I can support it, but I'm going to strongly object to legislative not being a standing committee.
Would you like to
And
make this legislative committee a stand? It's a board prerogative.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not Dr.
privilege of the board.
Household. So I'm in favor. If you think, I'm taking your guidance here, if you think that that's something this board should focus on a monthly basis.
Absolutely, this is something
would you
this
do it
board should
monthly or
focus on.
semi-monthly, or what do you recommend?
Monthly. I mean, and if you don't need to meet, or if there's nothing that, people are researching and doing stuff, whoever you put on this besides the board, the board members, and obviously, Dr. Housewald needs to be involved in that as the face of the district, as the leader of the district. But,
So
I think we need to involve, not that anybody wants any more added on their plate,
Right.
but everything that comes out of Frankfurt impacts every person in this district. Every administrator, every cafeteria worker, every bus driver, every teacher, every student, every family in this neighborhood. And as you said earlier, we fund most of our stuff locally. We don't get the state funding that everyone else does. We don't have a lot of federal dollars coming our way. So we need to start fighting more to get more out of Frankfurt for Boone County.
I think what you're describing is extremely accurate. There's so much work going on around us in Frankfurt and in all of our locales or whatnot, in support or not of various issues that this board deals with. So it's an enormous amount of work, but it doesn't necessarily go on all year, which I think when Jeff and I were considering this, the ad hoc left it open to if you wanted to have multiple meetings in January or when bills were filed, because they get filed all the way up until almost the end of the first half of the legislative session. Right. So, and then you get to this point in the year, and there's not. It's like our budget committee. We didn't have much to talk about this month, so we didn't meet. And if we're going to staff that committee with Dr. Housewald, and I'm assuming a couple other district people, rather than having them commit to one meeting a month, I'll give you my experience on the alternative task force. That was a fantastic meeting that met several times, a bunch of times. Some of them I didn't even get to attend because they were during my workday. A lot of good work got done in that committee. But it reached a saturation point where you talked about everything, right? Now we have to do the things that we said, the mission that we plotted, or they plotted out, and then see what is working, what's not working, and then bring the work back up later. And so I think that was the only meaning behind the ad hoc, is that it might be actually more than once a month. It might be a few times a month, depending on what work needs to be done in Frankfurt or with what stakeholders or shareholders or legislators. And then to have the flexibility because of that, the way I thought about it was because of that comment from our state legislators, who all have our phone numbers, by the way. If they can't make the Thursday at 7 o'clock committee meeting, then we would be able to flex that committee to meet with them more easily if we needed to, rather than having, if you can't make this 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, then we can't meet because that's when our committee meeting is. That was kind of the idea behind the ad hoc.
If
But I agree with you that it's one of the most important committees for sure.
And if I may, it's a question of, I was thinking we can meet 8 to 10 times, the same number as the other. But the concerns I heard was, number one, more board involvement in the agenda creation. The second concern I heard was, there's months we meet, we don't need to meet, or it gets canceled because there's nothing on the agenda. So we're trying to make these more meaningful. But again, going back to, after the legislators spoke, we reached out to them, some of them multiple times, and we had to be very flexible with their schedule. And, we met, I met one who wanted to meet at lunch, one wanted to meet. So, but I will say that I've circled back and I think, a majority of them, I've had the opportunity to sit down and meet with, and building those. And this committee it's relationship based. It's a lot of work, and so I guess the point is with ad hoc, we tell the community we're going to meet on this date, this time. We've had people show up and they're canceled, or we come in and we say, well, this isn't a very big month for legislation, but we're going to meet too. So I guess in my mind, and talking to Mr. Parks, those bottom ones really are in a regular schedule. But that's not to say that they may not meet more often, because I do believe in January, February, March, and prior to this, there's times where you may need to meet once a month, sometimes twice a month. So we were just trying to create, with back to Mr. Parks' comments, that sometimes we want to be flexible on the date and time because we need our legislators there. We need certain key people there. So that was the whole point of the ad hoc, was that there's flexibility, not that we could even do a report. I'm happy to say this is the number of times the committee's met. And I will be the first to say that legislative did not meet last year, and they should have. And that was the feedback you gave to me. It was one of the things we said this year, that you want to meet more often. Quantifying the number of meetings to me has been the concern I've heard, versus do we just set a standing time? Because that was really why we separated those. I'm okay either way.
Actually, it seems to me that ad hoc would give some fluidity, as long as you understood it was important. But an ad hoc would give some fluidity of when you were going to have these meetings, and because if you're going to have the public and it has to be announced, you have to have set times. So
Yeah.
I can kind of see the thinking behind having an ad hoc. I mean, as long as you're just not meaning that's an add-on, it's important, but the fluidity.
The
how are you
concern
gonna-
and I don't mean to speak for anyone here, but the concern is sometimes ad hocs don't meet at all. And that's what we want to avoid.
Like happened last year.
So I want to address that real quick. We keep talking as if that's true, but we might not. I don't know if we remember, but this district and districts all over the state were under attack and assault by issue 2, and we constantly met with our legislators in the form of one-on-one meetings and public meetings and rallies and everything to prevent the assault on our budget by this bad amendment that they put on the ballot. So we didn't meet as a legislative forum or anything like that, but we all met a lot with our neighbors and our communities to stop the assault on our public school system here in Kentucky. So we didn't meet legislative committee-wise, but we all met at the ballot box to defeat that. That was last year. That took last year. So I don't want to make it seem like that's true, like we just shirked our responsibilities, because we absolutely did not do that. We defeated this attack on public education that we had in Kentucky last year. That's what we did as a legislative committee, our entire community. So is it okay? Would you all like to move it to a standing committee? Either way is fine with me. I agree with Ms. Bird that the committee its importance is and it's been underutilized since I've been on the board. I think I've only served on the committee once, but it's been underutilized for sure, and it can do better work as long as we focus on it. So does that focus come with making it a standing committee where they meet once a month, or would you like to appoint?
Not every standing committee meets once a month.
Well, or whatever it ends up being, because I think the chair.
Teaching and learning doesn't meet once a month, does it? They do now?
Yes, yeah,
It
does.
used to be like quarterly or something.
Actually, it's
If the
every
chair of
other-
that committee, if this board is asking Dr. Housewald to chair that committee, then the co-chair would be a board member.
Which is fine.
And then the two of them could come up with whatever schedule they want. We could call it a standing committee, and we should. Why don't we do that? Why don't we call it a
And
standing
Dr.
committee?
Housewell doesn't have to be the chair unless
No,
he
I
chooses to
don't
be, but I
disagree
think
that I
he
should.
needs to
I'm-
be involved in that.
Yeah,
I
so
don't
why
have
don't
a
we
problem
call
with
it a standing committee, and then whoever the chair of the committee ends up being, with the co-chair, who is the board member, comes up with their own schedule that they think is important for whatever task that committee is working on at that time. Would that be acceptable? So a standing committee, and then they come up with their own schedule, whether it's once a month or in January and February, maybe they meet more than once a month.
We got to get ahead of the curve. We're always behind the curve.
I hear you. Okay, so with that one edit, I think.
And there won't
unless
be
there's something
a
else.
published date and time, but we will make it a standing committee with the understanding that it will meet irregularly as needed, and particularly flexible based upon the schedules of legislators and others. But the comment is that it's, I understand. So we'll make it a standing committee, but it won't have the, we had 5 with every board member having a chair, and these are regular published times, but we'll move it up and it'll look a little different.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do have one question is, on all of these committees, it's open to the public. So shouldn't that be open to the public as well?
It will be.
Okay, that was just my concern. Like, I think the public, if it's not going to be they just need to be aware of the times and be able to attend.
So funny you mentioned that. Last time we had a public forum with our local legislators, they were surprised the public was there, and they didn't understand they couldn't really just meet with the board privately. So we will make, I think that what you're saying is accurate. We need to, whoever the chair and co-chair of this committee needs to make sure that the district has publicized that meeting so people
You
can
have to
join.
by law, right?
I just want to say in defense of that, part of their confusion was the way that the invitation was sent to them.
I don't
So,
disagree.
I mean,
I
I,
just-
just
I
don't like
I
making
do-
our legislators just
I
look
do
like,
not disagree. Yeah.
look
I
bad
think it was-
for no reason. So
Yeah, our administration at the time.
It's
did
been
that.
my with the interaction with our legislators, they are more than welcome to do whatever. Yeah.
Now, would anyone like the motion to amend?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the committees as presented, with the exception of adding legislative to a standing committee with its schedule to be determined, and Dr. Housewall or a designee will serve as chair on that, but hoping he's there because he needs to be.